So as Amy said, I'm Chaney Mullins. I'm the Programs Manager of Divine Mercy Care. We are an umbrella organization with the mission to advance pro-life healthcare through programs that serve, inspire, and unify, that truly serve women, that truly inspire and educate, and that unify, that work more strategically with other organizations to be the most efficient group that we can be. We're sitting in Tepeyac OBGYN. That's our primary program at Divine Mercy Care. It's a 25-year-old medical practice, full service, comprehensive, insured and uninsured women. And infant loss support is the second one of our SERVE programs. And if you open your folders, you'll even see all our programs listed out. And you have a Stay Informed card. There's extras up here if you want to take them home. But you can sign up for more information if you choose to be on our mailing list so you can learn more about all of our programs. But infant loss support is something that we do working with Tepeyac as the medical provider. But we understand, as I said, that health is not merely physical. It's not just medical. It's emotional. You know that as doulas. We're holistic beings, body, mind, and spirit. And so infant loss support provides women with material and emotional support and education that comes right alongside what the doctors are doing at Tepeyac. We want this kind of approach to women's health to spread all across the country. So we've started certifying other medical practices all across the country as a pro-women's healthcare center. We're up to 12 centers now. And all these centers across the whole nation incorporate infant loss support, incorporate perinatal hospice, incorporate that holistic vision of women's health as body, mind, and spirit. And we think this movement is just beginning. So I am not a doula, but I am a woman. And as a woman, I can mother, I can help, I'm called to it. My very body speaks to the desire to give life onto others. And for me, though I'm not a mother yet, that takes this form of getting the honor of speaking with you tonight and the honor of putting together this program. And I'm inviting you into the core, into the very depths of your own heart and the hearts of these women that have experienced loss, who I'll be sharing some of their stories tonight. Sadly, the mainstream medical profession in OBGYN and women's health is far behind this approach. I recently heard the story of a woman whose doctor told her, "You can't possibly be grieving your miscarriage. You weren't far enough along to be grieving." Or the story of my friend's mentor who was told upon being diagnosed with a miscarriage, the doctor rolled his eyes and screamed to his nurse and said, "Get her a bucket. I guess she's going to want to keep it." This is the attitude of the medical profession by and large. Thankfully, there are exceptions. And we have the chance to turn the tide. So if you look again in your folders, you'll see our infant loss support program brochure. That's really what I'm going to be going through tonight, is the 5 aspects of infant loss support at Divine Mercy Care, which are all listed here. But we're going to start with the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program, which you heard some about in the video. This program was named for Dr. Anderson's daughter, who died tragically in a car accident at 25 years old. And she wanted to name this program after her because she said that the grief is the same, that these women who are experiencing the loss of their child in pregnancy or shortly after birth are experiencing the same kind of grief that she felt. And in fact, their grief has a new dimension because they're grieving what might have been. And yet, though our society gives her permission to grieve the loss of her daughter, so few times does our society and our medical profession give that same permission to moms experiencing infant loss. Perinatal hospice is about compassionate choices. It's about giving women the option to continue their pregnancy, to be the best mom they can be. Dr. Anderson points out, mothers want to be with their children, especially when they're sick, especially. This is an opportunity for a program that transcends the hyper-politicized debates of abortion and women's health that are happening in our country, because this program is something that we can all grow to love and appreciate in our hearts. But it's so little known on both sides, on all sides of the political spectrum. I talked to a woman who I'd spoken with at a pro-life rally who had never heard the word perinatal hospice and palliative care before in her whole career. I talked to a medical student at an airport. She was a wonderful woman. You could see her heart was for women. She was a feminist. She was talking about lowering the infant mortality rate, but she was also telling me that she thought it was really important to have abortion for fetal abnormalities. And I asked if she'd heard of perinatal hospice as another option to give women, to give them more choices. And she said, I love choices. I want women to have this choice, but I've never heard of this before in my whole life. What is it again? I've got to look it up. Please. I thank you for bringing my attention to this. And I explained to her that often these fatal diagnoses get wrapped up and confused with other perinatal diagnoses in the womb. Now, with technology increasing, we can really tell what's going on. And so things like Down syndrome can be detected. Things like a cleft lip can be detected in the womb. But there's 3 different types of abnormalities. There's the livable conditions, like Down syndrome or disabilities. There's the treatable conditions, like a cleft lip or some heart defects. And then there's these fatal conditions. And they all really deserve to be treated separately. And Dr. Bruchowski, the founder of Tepeyac, and I just taught a webinar on that. If you're more interested in that topic, it's on YouTube. But perinatal hospice is really about the fatal diagnoses, most commonly, or expected to be fatal. And so what can we do? What does the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program as the medical component and the Infant Loss Support Program of Divine Mercy Care as the emotional material component, what can we do to help women? Well, the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program is about to come out with a wonderful booklet. I have a draft here, and I hope some of you can come look at it after the presentation. And we give the patient all the information that she needs. The program aims to identify the baby accurately, to educate parents on the option to continue the pregnancy, and up to 80% of couples that have been presented with the option of perinatal hospice choose it. And then of those, I think it's something like 97% say they don't regret that choice. They appreciated the experience of getting to meet their child for however short that time was. And then the program provides the excellent medical care to mom and baby, same as any other mom and baby. Seamless support through pregnancy, delivery, postpartum, and a year after. And it offers a complimentary ultrasound and material support. That means a free 4D sonogram to spend time with the baby and love the baby. For some of these families, these are one of the very few pictures they'll ever have of their children. And then the program connects these families with additional support resources, including some local organizations that we're going to talk about this evening. And so then this book goes through. There's medical sheets like birth plans and diagnostic care and postpartum instructions for loss. But then there's more tender things too, like scholarly articles, local resources. So I really encourage you to take a look at this afterwards. But I think that one of the very most meaningful parts of the perinatal hospice program is our Heartbeat Bears. And this is just a Build-A-Bear. And as you know, Build-A-Bears can come with a recorded message. And you just have a little recorder like this, and we asked that the pups and bears be left unlaced for us. And so what happens at that ultrasound is that we record the baby's heartbeat in the recorder. And then we put it in the bear and sew it up and give it to the mom. And we hear over and over, even from moms that were at first like, I don't know what to make of this support animal. We hear how much comfort it brings them, how much comfort it brings their other children, and how much just hearing that baby's heartbeat is an affirmation that their child is alive or was alive, even after they pass. And we hope that more medical practices will choose to implement something like this. So that's the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program, and I hope you write down your questions because I want to leave lots of time for questions at the end. So the second part of infant loss support at Divine Mercy Care is the Susan Torres Award, which you just watched a video about. So the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program and Divine Mercy Care partner to present the award. And we really want to choose patients that have exhibited just above and beyond courage and joy in this time. Other than the video you saw, one of my other favorite stories that I want to read to you is from what we call a perinatal hospice flunk out. This happens when the baby unexpectedly lives. We love these perinatal hospice cases. They're not always easy though, as this story will show you. I want to say thank you to all of you who support Tepeyac through Divine Mercy Care, this mom writes. You've done more for me than you could ever know. Sometimes when we write a check or pledge funds to an organization online, it feels impersonal. What good have we done? I want to tell you a little about my daughter, Margaret, and in sharing her story, assure you of the great works you may not even know you are doing in your generosity to DMC. In 2013, my daughter Margaret was diagnosed with a rare abdominal birth defect when I was 14 weeks pregnant. The doctor said she was incompatible with life. They said I needed to terminate. They told me the merciful thing to do was to stop her from her suffering. There were no printouts of sonogram pictures for me at my weekly appointments. In fact, the doctors sometimes told me to close my eyes when they would do my sonogram. Close your eyes, they say. This would only upset you. I called Tepeyac. The doctors there had already delivered several of my children, but this time I was calling them for a different reason. I had a dying baby, and I knew Tepeyac had an incredible program I'd seen nowhere else. The Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice Program, a program to support families with babies facing grave illnesses. The Tepeyac doctors didn't tell me to close my eyes. At Tepeyac, the doctors wanted to know what my baby's name was. None of the other specialists I'd seen had ever asked me that before. Dr. Burchowski told me that while I was pregnant, Margaret was in the safest place she could be. Dr. Anderson explained that if she died, we would cooperate with God's plan for Margaret, but we would not send her back. They did a sonogram. They gave me pictures. Dr. Anderson made me a recording of her heartbeat. They allowed me to be a mother with her child rather than a woman with a problem to be solved. I want to be clear that the Tepeyac doctors didn't offer me false hope. They didn't say the grim diagnosis for Margaret was wrong. My gratitude to them didn't depend on the outcome of this pregnancy story. My Margaret was born on the Feast of the Assumption on April 15th, 2013. She spent her first year in the hospital. She came home on life support on a ventilator with a track and a feeding tube. But today, I am happy to report Margaret started preschool. She is alive today in no small part because of Tepeyac, and she is here in no small part because of your support of DMC. Tepeyac taught me that life-affirming medicine is possible even in the midst of suffering and death. I thank God for these doctors and for Margaret, and I am so grateful to you for supporting this incredible work. I'm so moved by that. She now serves on our board in Thanksgiving for what we've been able to do for her family. So I want to move on to one of my favorite parts of the infant loss support program at Divine Mercy Care, the third aspect of education and material comfort. I have a real heart for this. So I knew that the potential pro-women's healthcare centers that we'd started to visit across the nation really cared about infant loss and cared about accompanying families, but they didn't really know how to do it practically. They sometimes knew how to do it. Well, they certainly knew how to do it medically, and they sometimes knew how to do it in terms of what to say to a patient. But beyond that, people started saying, well, how do I get a miscarriage kit? What is a miscarriage kit? And I knew that if they didn't know, then we had some serious work to do. So as I started researching and looking at options and looking at different organizations that did infant loss support of various kinds, I realized this was a problem with a lack of knowledge, not a lack of resources. What started as Dr. Anderson telling me trepidatiously we may have to write our own turned into multiple options for pamphlets on each aspect of loss. I was grateful to see so much was available, but so angry that the marketing and organization of the resources hadn't been done before. But we set out to do it ourselves. So in your folder here, you've got these two legal sheets folded up. This one here that starts with a mom's piece. This is a list of organizations. And these organizations are sometimes international or national and sometimes local. And you can see that over on the far side of the paper. But this is what we could find of groups that we could recommend that helped with infant loss support in different ways. And we have a more expanded version on our website of exactly what ways those are. Is it material keepsakes? Is it education? Is it counseling? That sort of thing. So this is the abbreviated version, but I hope you visit our website for more. And then we also knew that we needed to give women books, pamphlets, and support groups. Because often women, and even their caregivers, don't know what to give them or where to send them. And so this list of books and pamphlets and support groups I hope will also be helpful to you. We've starred a couple of our favorites, but really we love all of these. We've tried to organize them by category of loss. And you can see that there's not a small number. There's things for spiritual and non-spiritual perspectives. There's things for fathers, siblings, grandparents. There's pamphlets for short resources, and then there's the longer books. And then there are the support groups when you know women need that little extra help. And the reason we wanted to include such a variety is because people do grieve differently, and they grieve at different times. And there's going to be some women that don't need any of this, and some women that need this for years. And it's our job as people accompanying them to give them that freedom and space, but to also give them that invitation into what they may benefit from. It's all about invitation. And so I'm going to go through now what Divine Mercy Care has chosen to include in their support bags. So that's also in here in your folders. Now, as I said, there are many choices of what you could choose to include in a miscarriage kit or a support bag for infant loss at various stages of gestation. But this is what we've chosen to include here at the Divine Mercy Care Infant Loss Material Supplies list. And you can see that as we went through, we realized that, of course, a woman experiencing a first trimester loss is not going to need the same things as a woman in a perinatal hospice loss. A woman that delivers at home is not going to need the same things as a woman that goes to the hospital. So we had to spend some time and break that up a little bit. And so I'm just going to go through these example support bags here. And as you can follow along if you'd like, or you can just listen. And we'll just go in general through first, second, and third. But of course, sometimes it depends upon that particular baby and mom as to what would be relevant or medically appropriate. So first trimester losses, I want to start with what isn't ideal and what is very common, unfortunately, in other places, which is what happened to my mother, for example. So one of the reasons I care so deeply about infant loss is because my brother was miscarried right around the border between first and second trimester when I was young. And Mom hurt for a long time. It was an era in which her friends and even my dad didn't exactly know how to support her. They didn't know what to say or even what resources were available. And she was not given a lot of information about what was happening to her body or the body of her baby. And she says now that she would have loved the choice to try to see if her body would deliver the baby at home, or if she could have been induced in order to deliver the baby, either at home or in the hospital, depending on her medical situation. But she says she was not given that choice. They immediately gave her a D&C. She was also not given the choice to have the remains of the D&C, which can actually be buried. Even though it was a D&C, we can still honor the life of the baby in a burial. And so I am particularly passionate about this because I don't have a grave to visit for my brother. I have to find other ways to honor him. And so I want to show you what we've been able to put together for first trimester losses. So this is a miscarriage kit from Elizabeth Ministries. And this is a net. And the net can serve as what catches the baby for the mom. There's also some instructions in here and some gloves. And we really recommend that this be put in a woman's purse if this is the type of delivery that she's opted for. Again, all women grieve differently and their medical situations are different, but it's very small and it's quite handy. This we recommend to keep at home. It's just a urine cap, but what we've done is drill holes in the bottom of it, and that way the fluids can drain, but the child's body can still be caught. And so the mom is able to bury that baby if that's what she would like. And so one of our pro-women's healthcare centers is working on a model of this that is going to be flowery and beautiful and feminine and specifically for this purpose of supporting miscarriage. For our first trimester moms, we like to give a little lamb to remind them of their child. Lots of mothers experience those empty arms when they feel they're supposed to be holding a baby, so pillows and support animals can help, again, for some women. And we always allow the providers to make a determination about what's right for that patient. We think that's really important. We have a little candle that you can include in the bag or kit, and that's just something that they can keep and light in memory of their child. And then for the losses, this probably is too big for a first trimester loss, but some of the early seconds that might still be delivered at home, the Lutherans are able to make this, and I can put you in touch if you want any. We have some. These are the really small ones, and I'll show you bigger ones for later stages. But they just make a really lovely burial vessel. And then, of course, if the mom has already delivered or is getting a D&C, you can still give her a lamb and a candle. And we have different bags available too, small and big, purple and white. Again, we're just trying to make it feel personal, trying to get something that the woman's comfortable with. So then this is our second trimester loss bag. I also have a story about a second trimester loss. A family that was here as patients of Tepeyac were good friends of mine and had several children and were surprised but excited to find out they were expecting another. But last February, they came as routine to the prenatal appointment, asked me to come in and hear the heartbeat, which I had done a few weeks prior to great joy and excitement with some of the other children. But this time we couldn't find a heartbeat. I immediately started praying, and I asked the mom, "Do you want me to leave you alone?" And she screamed emphatically, "No, whatever you do, don't leave me." And I said, "I won't leave you." So we called her husband. We went through the excruciating process of the ultrasound, and they decided that she would induce labor. And she really wanted a particular doctor to deliver her because it was the only doctor that hadn't delivered any of her children. And she wanted to complete the full spectrum of Tepeyac doctors, which I thought was sweet. And so Dr. Pereira delivered her on Valentine's Day last year. And she always gives me permission to tell this story because she asked me, she and her husband were talking about names for the baby. And I piped in and said, "Well, it is Valentine's Day and you are Catholic, even though I'm not, you are. And I rather like St. Valentine." And so they named her Valentine. So it was such an honor to accompany a family, but I wish that we had had then what we've now developed this year. I wish that I had had some little pamphlet or book to give her, or a little blanket or a little bear, but we just didn't know what to do or what to give. So that's another reason that I'm so inspired to create these bags and programs. So what we have now is a little blanket that can be used as a keepsake or in burial if the mom prefers. You have a burial shroud. It's a little larger option. Here's the knitted kind from the Lutherans again, and I hope you all come up and touch them after they're quite soft. You have the candle again. Then you have these, and we're figuring out whether these are best given at the hospital as opposed to the office, but right now they're here. And these are weighted bears. So this is a 1-pound bear and a 2-pound bear. So if the mom loses a 1-pound baby or a 2-pound baby, she can have the bear that matches that weight. And this supplier has several bears to choose from. We just chose these two. And she can also customize the weight of the baby if that means a lot to the mom to have the exact weight of her child, which I thought was lovely. And then there are third trimester losses, stillbirths, and perinatal hospice situations. I have also had an experience walking with a family through that. It was a strange experience because they were my next door neighbors and I'd just gotten to know them. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever had a mystical experience or a vision of some kind in a way that you can't explain. But I was going in my house one night and I knew they were about to have their baby soon. And the thought occurred to me, what if their baby dies? And it stuck in a strange way. And a few days later, my roommate came to me and said, "Chaney, did you hear? The next door neighbors had a stillbirth." And I said, "I think I knew that." And so I knew that I was called to walk with this family in whatever way I could. And I have to say, I didn't do that perfectly. I pushed her a little bit, tried to get her to come to our memorial service when she wasn't ready. Now I know that for a lot of women, it takes about a year before they're ready to attend a memorial service. And so I just went to the funeral and I brought them cinnamon rolls. Simple things. As you all know, it's the simple things that make the biggest difference. And I made sure she had a book. And I just let her know that her baby mattered. And that's all she wanted. That's all she needed. So this is our third trimester bag. If you have a stillbirth, you can still give one of the larger stuffed animals without the heartbeat in it. We have a blanket again. And the candle again. And Dr. Anderson really likes to give certificates of life especially to the perinatal hospice babies. You see the Kristen Anderson Perinatal Hospice logo is on here. It's in Kristen Anderson's handwriting. That's what the logo is, her signature. And so Dr. Anderson presents this to the family. And if the family doesn't get a certificate in the office at their appointment, they can always email Divine Mercy Care, and we can give them a certificate electronically and customize it with the name of their baby that they can then print and frame or keep in a memory box of some kind. And that's an important way, again, of saying this baby was alive and this baby mattered, because a lot of people are afraid to say that and afraid to understand what that mom really needs. We also have a series of booklets that we're able to give as relevant to the mom. We have selected some, but again, please take home and look through our entire pamphlet list, because some may be more or less relevant to your work or those you know who might be experiencing loss. So we have a Ponderings of the Heart Mother's Journal after the loss of a child. And this is just a wonderful little book to process feelings. And again, this can go in a memory box, which I'll show you in a minute. We have a book on fathers grieving, which is very important and very neglected. Their grief can be different, and it can take them longer to come to terms with it. It took my dad until just a few years ago to fully grieve and process the loss of his son, but he was able to have an experience in which he was at a Good Friday service and kissed the cross and realized he'd be reunited with his son in heaven. And so it takes special attention for the men. And so it's important to have a resource for them. We have Mourning a Miscarriage, which is a prayer book if women are religious. Of course, not all our patients are, but we try to have lots of different options on hand. This same group, Elizabeth Ministry, is coming out with another book just for the mothers. So we're ordering that. That's brand new. That just came out. We have something in Spanish, Miscarriage for Spanish speakers, which is important in this area. And Sibling Sorrow, which of course is very close to my heart because I had to go through my own grieving process, realizing I was missing a sibling. And it's really sweet because another one of our Divine Mercy Care volunteers has had losses, and her living children, her sons, really enjoyed and appreciated how every year they went and they mourned the loss of their brother. But years later, years into it, she mentioned to them that she had also had an ectopic pregnancy, and that at that time she didn't even realize she was pregnant. She didn't fully understand what was happening, and she was grateful for Dr. Wachowski walking her through all of it. And her sons got mad at her, and they said, "Why didn't you tell us that we had another sibling in heaven? We wanted to know. We wanted to be able to mourn that child too." And in that sweet innocence of children, she realized what a gift it is to share the sorrow as a family. What we do in my family is that every year we have a Christmas bell, and we have 4 bells, one for each child, including the one that was lost. And my brother had the wonderful idea of sponsoring one of the Tepeyac exam rooms. So if you walk through the facility and visit exam room 4, it's the Samuel Mullins exam room, named after my brother who was lost, and it's for the 4 Mullins children. And so it's very meaningful to us. And then lastly, we have Suffering a Stillbirth or Newborn Death, which is, again, a particular type of loss that needs special attention. And now we're considering, I've been grateful for Tabitha helping me go through our resources, and now we're considering adding something specifically for grandparents, and maybe some other resources as well, perhaps something about having a pregnancy after a loss, which can be a unique experience, which has a lot more angst than usual. So those are the education and material guides that we have, but we also introduce women to other groups locally that can help them. Here I have an advertisement for Embracing Grace, which is peer support for couples, for families going through a perinatal hospice situation and a fatal diagnosis. There's nothing like getting to talk to somebody who's been there. And then there's A Mom's Peace. This is for babies that die in utero, so perinatal hospice wouldn't apply, but this is very important because it's all about burial. And it answers that question of how do I, what do I, can I even pursue burial for this child? And this is the place to go for that. We also send women to Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which is a wonderful organization that does photography for infant loss and perinatal hospice, and they know how to take pictures of the baby in a respectful and reverent way. And then we have, of course, certain doulas in this area, like Tabitha and like Laura Ricketts, who are trained in infant loss and bereavement, so we can send women to them if they're anticipating a loss. And let's see, okay. That's all for education and material comfort. So I would like to move on to the Interdenominational Infant Memorial Service, which is the fourth aspect of infant loss support at Divine Mercy Care. So this is an annual service. It is from a Christian's perspective, but really anyone's welcome. We make it very accessible. You can all follow along in the program. And we have clergy from multiple denominations, and that can be special because a lot of times these clergy have never worked together or collaborated on anything before. And now they're collaborating and coming together in order to love and help these families experiencing loss. So one clergyman hosts and does some readings, and the other gives the homily or sermon or talk or reflection. And it's always very moving. But there's also an even more moving part of the service, which is when each family is invited up to light a candle and place a rose in a vase in memory of their child. And then they're given the opportunity to speak and share their story. Not all families do, but they're invited to. And for those that do, almost always the first thing they say is, "Thank you for having this service. Thank you for allowing me to know that my child existed." There's amazing stories that come out of this service. There was a man who was in his 70s facing the fact that his girlfriend had had an abortion when he was very young. There was a sweet couple who'd had a difficult bereavement birth, who felt like their OBGYNs weren't sensitive, but they had never heard about Tepeyac and were planning to switch immediately to Tepeyac to try and have another baby. And there's the story of a sweet woman who my mom's best friend simply told about the service, knew she was crying on, I think it was the anniversary of her child's death or trying to process after her child had died. And she came to the service and she said that it healed her. It got to that part of her heart that she was trying to find some hope within. She thanked her friend so much for telling her, for giving her that opportunity. And I have put in all of your folders an invitation to that service, and I hope that you will send it to someone. It doesn't matter what the type of loss was or when the loss was. This can be a very healing service. And we also have grandparents and siblings that participate with a cross and a memory box, as well as a certificate of life. And these are just some of the examples of memory boxes. We like to let the women pick. There's big or small, there's store-bought or designed by groups as a service project. And we just lay them out and let the women choose from among them. And some of the things that we've given them, either at the office or things that they've accumulated on their own, like the hospital bracelet for their baby, can go in this memory box. So that's the Interdenominational Memorial Service, and it's May 11th this year, and I hope that some of you will attend, even just as an observer, to see what it's like. And then the fifth part of infant loss support at Divine Mercy Care is honoring the lost children. I've already mentioned the electronic and print certificates of life, but we're also starting to send sympathy cards. They're right over here. It says, "Gone but not forgotten." And this is something that really truly makes Tepeyac something more than medicine, which is the tagline. And the nurse at Tepeyac is able to hand sign a card to every woman after a loss. And we're also able to connect her with our resources lists and our directories, and if she needs more support. And soon, we'll be ordering a very special, if I have it here. Yes, here we go. We will be ordering a book of remembrance that will reside in the Tepeyac Chapel as a place to put the names of children that have been lost, whether they're emailing us from across the country or whether they're a patient who happens to stumble upon the book waiting for their appointment. We want this to be a place that honors these unborn lives and really any child that has died. You know, the service and this book can mean so much to women regardless of the type of loss that they've had. And I included in your folders a glossary of types of infant loss, because I think it's so easy to forget. We think miscarriage, we think abortion, we think stillbirth, and we forget about ectopic pregnancy, about perinatal hospice losses, about SIDS. There's many types, and I encourage you to study those glossaries and become more familiar with those types. And so this service is really for any woman who wants to grieve. It was interesting when I started looking at related griefs like infertility or phantom pregnancy, where the woman thinks she's pregnant, or even after a loss where she's still experiencing phantom kicks, which can often freak her out, but it's extremely normal as part of the grieving process. And so these related griefs are worth understanding and caring about. My spiritual mother, as I call her, had a unique type of infant loss, which really did not involve the death of the child. It was that she had adopted the child, and that within the 10-day window, the birth mother changed her mind, and she had to give back an infant that she'd already adopted and bonded with. And so women's experiences and stories are so diverse, and that's why we wanted to have a comprehensive resources list and book list and educational opportunities so that we can have things like our memorial service open to all types of grief. So that is what we are doing at Divine Mercy Care, and I would be extremely honored to take your questions because, as you can tell, this is something I care very deeply about, and I really long for people to understand in more fullness. Thank you very much.
Thought, how is it that you will know what the woman wants? You know, I mean, that's a very interesting conversation to have.
Definitely. So I think that I have not gone through that conversation with the patient. So we're trying to get our providers up to speed, and they're almost experimenting with a proper method of how to address this from a patient flow perspective. But when I was talking to Tabitha about it, really what we know so far is that it's often better to over-offer to women than under-offer, because if they say no, you can do it in a very respectful way and say, of course, we understand your grief is your own, and if you ever need anything, we're here for you, but you do what's best for you in this time. But if we don't offer them that resource, then they don't even know it's available. And we miss that opportunity of giving them that option.
So are these opportunities, options, pamphlets, bags only available through Tepeyac?
These particular ones are only available through Tepeyac, but we have compiled a vendors list with links for where to buy every single thing that you see up here. So I'm happy to send that out if you'd like to purchase them. And Tabitha plans on taking the bags and support folders to other OBGYNs to ask if they would like to stock some of these similar types of kits and options for women.
Do you all have, or do you have the hospitals around here have access to I think they're called cuddle cots? So do you guys have resources for women to have access to those?
Yes. So it was a funny story because I had learned about cuddle cots and was very passionate about making sure that we had one. And so we started raising money as a specific campaign for a cuddle cot, and then found out that Fair Oaks Hospital had a cuddle cot that was sitting unused in the closet. So we were very grateful that it got out, it got started. It's been used a couple times over there now, and the doctors and nurses are now accustomed to it.
What's a cuddle cot? Explain it.
Oh yes, so it is a very, I had no idea when I first learned about it. So essentially it's a bassinet for a baby, but it can plug in to stay cold. And so the baby's body, after it dies, it can very rapidly start to decay. And so this gives the family longer to mourn and to spend time with the baby's body instead of sending it straight to the morgue at the hospital. And this can be extremely helpful when grandparents and other family members want to fly in and get to see the baby before it's buried. It's extremely helpful for families. Again, not right for every family, but a very important option to give. And so we do have one at Fair Oaks Hospital, and we also, I should have brought some from out back, but we also have some caskets from Elizabeth Ministries that we're experimenting with. Sure, there's a small one and a bigger one. But they're great for transporting the remains of the baby. There's certain regulations about burial, so you always want to check with the mom's piece in this area for that before you bury them in this casket, but they're amazing for a place to put the baby in between getting everything lined up for burial. So there's a first trimester casket, and then there's a second trimester casket. And the second trimester casket, we're in talks right now with the hospital to get them to actually stock it. And if they stock that, what that can do is actually be almost a miniature cuddle cot for a second trimester loss, because you can put an ice pack kind of under it. You'll see when she brings it out, and then that can keep the baby of the second trimester loss cold. And that would have been wonderful last year when we were going through a second trimester loss, because Valentine did start to break down and we really just wanted another hour with her. And so it would have been lovely to have that ice in that casket for her.
And do you think that it wasn't being used at Fair Oaks just because nobody really knew how to broach the subject with moms?
I think it was just a practical thing. A lot of times what I've noticed in the medical profession is that they have their rhythm of caring for patients, and to add something that's material or emotional or mental health or something a little outside the box can be very challenging for medical professionals to shift to that and to make space for that. But it's wonderful that the nurses at Fair Oaks actually have a great bereavement program. I've seen their checklist to the point where they've almost said that if a mom does not have a bereavement doula during a bereavement, that we shouldn't worry, because the nurses are all trained in bereavement, and in bereavement cases at Fair Oaks, that's the only patient that the nurse is assigned to at that time. So it's a really lovely program, and I saw how that worked during Valentine's death last year and was impressed with it. They have a memory box that they keep at the hospital that has the footprints for the later losses and little outfits of different sizes. So you'll see in your folders there's actually a section that says at the hospital, as well as a section that lists everything that's here at the office. And so you can really take this to other OBGYNs and hospitals and say, this is what can be at the hospital, this is what you should have on hand for your patients. And there's some duplication, again, because some women deliver at home and some women go to the hospital. So it does depend on the gestation and the medical situation of the mom.
And did you list
Any hospital.
Every hospital?
It could, we're hoping that it becomes every hospital. Even Fair Oaks doesn't necessarily have everything on that list right now, but we know some nurses there in the bereavement department, and we're working up to that. And they're getting their own store organized. They have certain pamphlets too. And again, sometimes we double stock because the talking to children about loss, they might get that at the hospital, but we also want one here for the younger ages of gestation.
Two questions.
Yes.
First, how are you promoting that, your service, outside this area? And secondly, how, I mean, I had an experience at DW, and for me it was like, I was not trained to face that situation. But I noticed that the mom was placed in a room where she can hear the cry of the other baby.
Oh.
And it was,
Oh.
so they had the crowd,
Mhm.
but I don't know how.
Yes, very good question. So at Fair Oaks, we don't do that. We put them in a room sort of off to the side and in the front, which is lovely. But really, it's about hospital education. I saw, what was it? It was from before, it was written out on the typewriter. I don't remember the exact year though, but it was like, feeding can only be done, in little 5-minute segments, and the dad can't be in the room during feeding, and your baby has to be apart from you except when you're nursing. And this is hospital policy, and this is best for you and your baby, so this is what we follow. And I looked at it now, and people were joking about it, and I was just horrified. It made me want to cry. I said, how? We're causing trauma at the earliest parts of a child's life. So really, hospitals have come a long way from those days, and I think now the next frontier is bereavement and helping doctors, nurses, midwives understand all of that. And I think doulas have a very important role to play in that effort. In terms of our program, this is brand spanking new. This is our beta presentation. So everything in your folders is new. We've got basically the links up on our website for drafts, but other than that, we're going to have some things professionally graphically designed. We're going to order the Book of Life. We've still got a long way to go, but we felt like we needed to get it strong here first at Tepeyac and Divine Mercy Care. And then I just started praying for people that felt called to spread it around, whether that's literally just through organic, I'm going to take it to my own hospital, or whether that's through donating and coordinating actual advertisement campaigns online, so we can start educating doctors and hospitals and women about the fact that these resources are available. So if you feel called to help me with that and become one of my infant loss volunteers or donors, please be in touch with me. My cards are in the folders, and so is a giving envelope where you could donate and designate to the Infant Loss Support Program so that it goes to paying for all of this that you see. So please consider that and volunteer. Yes.
I guess for me, the questions would be around what is a doula's role and pregnancy after a loss.
Yes, very important. Whew, so much there. The role of a doula. I think that doulas have a very important role in bereavement because they already have the disposition and the natural skills to understand the emotional side of pregnancy. You're not medical providers, and so just like you have to do for birth, you have to do for bereavement. You have to educate the providers, and you have to advocate for the women so that they can have a better experience than they would otherwise. So I think more than anyone, doulas need to be educated and go through the list of resources and look them up and decide which ones are your favorite and decide which ones you will recommend to the women that you serve. And to really even put the word out at your church or your community center or whatever, that if there's a woman that is experiencing loss, they can call you, that you can walk them through this, and that you can be, maybe it starts as peer-to-peer support, and then maybe you decide to go get specific bereavement doula training, which is available. And I highly recommend at least starting to feel more comfortable with it yourself, because as Amy was telling me, you run into this all the time in this field.
This is part of my question, and I will help address that.
Yeah, please.
Is that, are the doctors trying to figure out why there is so much infant loss now? There didn't used to be. It is my opinion that in the past 5 years, it has become exponential, how often we hear of it. So this is awesome and amazing, and I'm so sorry that it's so needed. It wasn't needed 10 years ago. I mean, of course, everybody knows of somebody who experienced it, but most people could only count one person that they knew.
Yes.
And now I'm hearing of loss like weekly.
Well, it's also more taboo.
Nobody talks about it.
Yeah, but there's a lot more. It's still.
There's still more, yeah, for sure.
My husband and I work for a funeral home. We do, we go to the hospital and get up the babies. So there's a lot more. People are talking about it. We're picking up a lot of babies.
Wow.
It's,
Our funeral home particularly does cost only, and other funeral homes do that. There's a lot of
Oh.
cost only for parents who lost a child.
yeah.
It's in Charlottesville.
There's several in your resources list.
But what it didn't say was how much that cost for people. though.
That
It's a
is-
huge hit.
Yes, that's all on the more advanced version of that resources list online. There's a part that says financial aid available. And also a mom's piece knows all those programs and where you can get cost only or even less for moms.
But Cindy, may I address?
Yes,
what
please.
you would do? So, as you're going through the rainbow baby, as we call it, which is the next pregnancy after a loss, whether it was an infant loss, whether it was a poor diagnosis, whether it was a child's loss in your family, what is the next pregnancy like? It's like a regular pregnancy, except it's exactly the same, only different. Of course, the emotional side is going to be a much more dramatic thing, because they're going to be constantly thinking of the child that they lost. There's going to most likely be a lot of fear attached to it. Oftentimes, depending on the loss situation, moms aren't always able to identify that rock that's stuck in their gut, and it just rolls around. They can't always identify
How
where
does
it
it
goes.
show up? What do I look for?
They're just very fearful of this pregnancy, and it's important to remind them, this is this baby's journey, and you've never carried this baby. And this baby had a brother, right, that's older than him, but it also has a sister and another brother, or whatever. My opinion is absolutely acknowledge the other child, call it by name. If they've named the baby, they don't always, but if they do. But just if mom is up for it, have her tell you about it. And then just listen. I know I had a birth one time, mom had a loss at 24 and a half weeks. She's expecting another baby now. And what no one else in the room understood was the door was open, and a woman came and was talking to the nurse at the nurse's station right next to the room she was in, explaining she was 24 and a half weeks and bleeding. And nobody else in the room had walked with this mom. And the mom was ready to deliver.